Alright guys, welcome back to the garage, and today we're working on the suspension for the Honda Element.
Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single time.
Alright guys, so today we're working on the Element suspension. I have the fronts, I have the rears, and I have the front lower control arms. Try to get it all done in one video, but worst case scenario, I'll get the rears done and release shortly after. But for now, let's go ahead and get the car up in the air, and let's get started. Alright guys, so the first step, get your car up in the air, get your wheels off. That'll expose all your suspension, and then we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do this lower control arm here. It mounts in 3 different points. One here, one in the back over here, and then one underneath here where your lower ball joint is, right here. So 3 points, that should come out pretty easily, and then we can work our way into the strut, which should attach with 2 bolts here, a couple of external stuff like your tie rod ends, and some of the brake lines may be attached, as well as 3 bolts up top. So once we get that done, we can finish up the front, move our way to the back, and let's do it. So I was definitely right to go ahead and order one of these lower control arms. You might not be able to see as well as I can, but this bushing is completely shot, which would explain a lot of the feel and issues that I've been experiencing while driving this car. And once I'm done, it should feel a whole lot better. So let's go ahead and get this old control arm out, and then we can start installing the new one. So another thing we're going to want to remove when we're doing these lower control arms is this sway bar link right here. So your sway bar will link your 2 control arms on either side together and just helps put extra torsion force on your suspension. So on this lower level here, we're going to undo this nut, should be a 14 millimeter, and we're going to get that loose and move that link out of the way.
Slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you.
Alright, another teachable moment. You'll notice here sometimes when you're working on these sway bar links that the nut will actually start to spin with the ball joint. So if you note, might not be able to see it, but it is actually spinning together. So basically what you want to do is take an Allen key and insert it in here. And then you should be able to back the nut off while holding the threads. All right, there we go. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start here with the lower ball joint. The first thing we're going to want to do is take this clip off, which is pretty simple. Just want to grab the clip here and then just kind of pry this section away here. And just pull right out. So once this clip is removed, we can go ahead, take a 17 millimeter and go ahead and get that off. Alright, so I like to start out with a breaker bar. So I go ahead and get this on here. Try to get a little bit of leverage and then break it loose. Once it's loose, I can move either to an impact gun or just a ratchet, whichever works best, and go from there. I'm going to go ahead and leave this here so that when we separate the ball joint, I'm not putting any pressure right on the actual stud here, since I am going to reuse my ball joints. They do seem like they're okay, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop this loose. Alright, so for removing the ball joint, there are several different tools. This is a ball joint tool. I don't think this actually fits on this vehicle, but if it does, that's going to be the easiest way to do it. I think the back of the spindle and the tool are just a little bit too close in size. Let me see if I can get it in from this side. Sometimes you have to tap it in, but if this doesn't work, then I may have to move to the pickle fork and hammer routine, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, because this kind of fits in right here. And you can wiggle it back and forth, hammer it in, whatever works. So let's go ahead and let's try to pop this ball joint out, and then we'll go from there. All right, so I opted to go with the ball joint tool here. As you can see, the fork fits right in between here, in between the spindle and your lower control arm. So what you're gonna want is to line up this bottom piece on the nut and the threads from the ball joint. You're gonna have a screw over here on this side. Should be about a 24 millimeter. I already have a socket on here, and then all I had to do was kind of just tap it in between, and then I'll go ahead and tighten this down and it should pop it off. And there we go. So as you can see over here, that basically popped down and it should be loose now. Go ahead and loosen this up and remove it.
You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things.
Alright, well, I'm not sure how smooth of a transition this will be from what you've just seen to what I'm doing right now, but I wanted to go ahead and stop this video at this point and kind of go over some of the stuff that can go wrong while you're working on your car. So, as you might have just seen, I'm having a lot of issues with the ball joints, whether it's the nut coming off, or the threads when the nut goes back on, or even the threads being damaged trying to remove the ball joint from the control arm, or the ball joint just not coming out of the control arm at all. So to give you a brief synopsis on what happened on the passenger side, everything seemed like it was going great. I got the nut off, I put the nut back on to try to protect the threads while I was removing the ball joint. In that case, the nut got damaged, which is good because it protected the threads, but when the nut got damaged, it was stuck. So I ended up trying to get the nut off, which I was successful. The nut is right here. But I did damage the top of the nut. Since it is a castle nut, it does have a spot for a cotter pin to hold everything in, and that got damaged. So ultimately, I'm gonna have to replace those ball joints anyway because I damaged the threads while trying to take off the nut that was damaged, and it just kind of cascaded from there. I was able to remove the ball joint from the control arm, which allowed me to replace the control arm, which you can see here. There's one bushing that actually sat in the front on the subframe is completely disconnected. You can see the collar here. There's no more connections there. So when I took that out, that was basically the cause of most of the issues that I was trying to fix. But now the issue is the ball joint has to be replaced. So let's move over to the driver's side. Similar situation, having trouble getting the nut off. The nut finally comes off clean, but when I go to remove the ball joint itself is fine, but the threads and the arm of the ball joint get destroyed and ultimately won't release from the control arm. So I do have it on the new control arm on the passenger side and the old control arm on the driver's side. The old control arm has no bolt in it. I've tried to move it back and forth, try to use the weight of the vehicle to try to release the ball joint. So we're gonna go take a look at that here in a moment, but ultimately what's gonna happen is I'm gonna make a second video. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut this video off here. I am ordering new ball joints. I am also ordering new CV axles, which I noticed were ripped on either side. And I've just expanded what I'm gonna consider this front end rebuild. So I'm gonna order up some tools as well, just to make sure I have the tools that I need in order to get everything done. You can also rent some of these specialty tools at your local AutoZone or Advance or any other auto parts store. Usually what it is you pay the price of the tool, and then when you return it, whether it's a week later or whatever, I think you get about 30 days and you get your money back. So not 100% sure on the rental policy, don't quote me on that, but it is an option. But for now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap up this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for part 2 of this front suspension rebuild. And we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.
Just tell me that I can